All right, folks, welcome. We are here for a live edition of the Growth Rings podcast, and I really appreciate having you all here. So, if you're interested in leaving a comment, do that on the side. If you're watching this at a later date, that's totally fine. You can email us your comments. I will also leave below a link that you can join our efforts around community building and engage in some of these conversations going forward. Live trainings that we will be offering, both online like this, but also in person, depending on what works well for your schedule. You can also, we will try to provide opportunities that are not always live and have recorded opportunities as well. So that's just to start out here and to pad a little while people join us online. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you every week when we publish our podcasts. We'll have interviews with folks coming up about different disability and advocacy related topics. That's what we do here. We advocate around disability, but we understand disability is a very broad community that is impacted many different ways. If you live in rural Montana and have a particular disability, that'd be very different than if you moved to Billings or Missoula. And if you grew up on the Crow Reservation and you moved to Bozeman, the ways you get around, the people you interact with are all going to be different, and the resources available to you, both informally and formally, will be different. So we appreciate that everybody is coming to this community from their own unique position. We don't in any way try to claim we know what's best across the state, but we do think it's valuable to hear from folks across the state. So if you're interested in being interviewed or being on one of our podcasts, please sign up in the link that I mentioned is below, and we will hear about your experiences here in Montana as a disabled Montanan. This week, we are exploring conflict. I know conflict makes people a little leery a lot of times. I mean, we kind of teach people that to be a good person, to be a nice person, is a person that avoids conflict. But that I think breaks down pretty quickly when you realize some people are treated poorly, and it's nice, it's good to stop that poor treatment, and it will require some conflict to get there. I think all problem solving is an exercise in conflict. It's about managing conflict, but it's not about ignoring conflict or thinking you can get through resolving tough things without some sort of conflict, even if it's something simple. I want to go get ice cream after dinner, and my son wants to stay home and watch a movie. That is conflict. We have two different objectives. I could go my own way and get in the car and go get some ice cream, and my son could stay home. That would avoid the conflict, but it also avoids the reason for both of our motives. His motive is let's watch a movie together. My motive is let's go get some ice cream together. And you just simply can't get through that if you want to ignore the conflict. You can compromise on different things, give up different things, but you're not actually resolving the problem. We want to do something together. We have different ideas of that. So talking a little bit about that. And I may not really care that much about ice cream. I just thought it was a decent idea. But if he doesn't tell me, oh, I'd prefer to watch a movie, I don't get my goal of doing something fun with my son, and he doesn't get his goal of watching a movie and, I hope, having fun with me. Instead, I get ice cream and he just sort of tags along but doesn't accomplish his goals. So he's left out of that decision-making process. He isn't achieving everything he could achieve because he cared more about the movie time with me than I cared about the ice cream time. I just wanted time, whatever it is. So we start to realize that we miss out when we try to avoid conflict altogether. The idea that you could avoid conflict really means you're giving up on seeing if there's a way to resolve a difference of opinions. And you are going to resolve them towards the more powerful person in the situation. Whoever plays chicken and gives up first, they lose in that situation. It is a win-lose situation from the beginning. And that's not conflict resolution. That's just letting the unmentioned conflict win out the day. And that happens day in, day out. Just regular small things like I don't have the. I'm not going to argue this one with you. I'll give it up, and that's fine. You can choose to do that, but you also recognize that it wasn't that important to me. I gave it up. There are some things though in life that are very important. The rights of people to be treated properly, not mistreated. The rights of people to be left alone. And when we have government actors interfering with people's lives, when we have paid providers bossing people around or even straight up hurting them, it's not enough to say, well, let's, agree to disagree and move on. In that case, the powerful entity, in my situation, in my scenarios I offered, that would be the government getting to do what they want to do, the provider abusing in some fashion that meets their goals and needs, but clearly violates the rights and needs of the individual that's being hurt. In order to stop those things, someone needs to raise their hand and say, hold up, that's not okay. By simply saying there is a problem, that is identified as creating the conflict. I would offer that doesn't create the conflict, that just explains the conflict, and that explaining conflict gets blamed for being the conflict far too often. Advocates' job is to explain the problem that it currently exists and offer solutions, not get positional about, I know the only way to fix this is to do it my way or the highway, but rather identify a problem, pull smart people together to start working on that problem and come up with a solution that works for everybody. Now, is it always possible to get a win-win situation where everybody appreciates the outcome? Absolutely not. That's part of the conflict. Is there will have to be compromise. But if only one side is compromising, that is still conflict. That's not resolving the conflict or avoiding the conflict. That's just letting the conflict run amok and hurt the person with less power in a particular situation, or at least with less understanding of how to wield the power that they do have. Because I think a lot of times we talk about governments and companies having a lot of power in situations, but that's only because we're accepting the rules of the game that have been set up, and that there are ways to advocate and leverage power that is not as readily recognized. And the reason it's not recognized, or the reason it's hidden, or the reason it's ignored sometimes, and is that it doesn't favor those who currently wield power. And if we as individuals were to recognize our power, that's a threat on the status quo of those who are able to wield power without us pushing back. And that's where I think coalition building comes in. That's where resorting to courts may come in, or resorting to political processes comes in, because if you can get access to those spaces to use power in those ways, you can really change the dynamics of a situation. So I've talked a lot about abstracts, but I've got my coffee here because I don't know how long we're going to go. We'll see if we have any questions. Feel free to drop questions in the chat, and I will take a look at those. I will note that there's a bit of a delay, which is I wasn't anticipating. This is my first live event, and that's totally fine that there is a delay. Now I know that, but I'm also slow at reading, and when I'm thinking, I can't always jump between talking, thinking, and reading smoothly. So we'll see as questions come in how I field them, but and you'll please bear with me. Now, to get started, I don't think litigious is a dirty word. That was the premise of this presentation, this talk, is I'll see you in court, and that seems like a very threatening, scary, if not aggressive statement in a lot of people's minds. In mine, it's often like, great, let's resolve this. Let's not continue to talk about who's right, who's wrong, who can get away with what without being called out. Let's just present all the evidence and have a judge resolve that. That is how a society that is ruled by the rule of law resolves hard conflicts. The most difficult decisions you can make, if it's, is an employer discriminating against someone when they fire them? Is a developer violating a contract when they build things one way and not another way? And should they get paid $2 million or not get paid $2 million? Should this house have been able to be sold to this person or that person? These are complicated legal issues that go before a judge, and there is a framework for how to resolve those issues. It's far better than punching people. It's far better than shooting people. We've seen a rise in political violence, and I think that correlates a bit with a degradation in understanding or appreciating and valuing the rule of law, that people feel impotent, and a way to get some power back is to use violence. That's, I think, an illegitimate use of advocacy. I think we have lots of advocacy tools that are at our disposal. Are all of them equally available to all people? No. Rich people have access to court far better than poor people. That's just a given, because lawyers cost a lot of money, and the more and better lawyers you have, the longer you can fight, the more you can fight. When I was a much younger person, didn't have white in my beard, didn't even have a beard, I volunteered on a legal needs study where I went and interviewed people who did not have much money and asked them about their life and what types of real world problems pop up in their life. And many real world problems are also legal problems. But if you don't have a lawyer, if you don't think of using the courts as a tool to resolve conflicts because you don't have access to a lawyer or money to hire one, then you often don't think of, oh, how could I resolve this real world problem in a court? And at that time, we found that the average person, this was in Washington State, I was going to law school at Gonzaga in Spokane. So I was interviewing people in rural eastern Washington. And the average person who doesn't have much money has over 7 legal needs every year that are not met. And then that study was redone, I don't know, like 12, 15 years later, and that number had risen to 10. So almost once a month, some legal issue comes up that someone may be absolutely right. I was in the right. I should not have had to pay to fix my car after someone else plowed into it. They should have had to pay for that. I should not have been denied health care. That was part of my insurance policy, but I didn't have the legal resources, the financial resources to push back on that. So if you imagine 10 times a year, there's something where you're right, or there's a good chance you could be right, but you can't prove you're right because you don't have access to a lawyer. Now, if you're rich, you can go after each one of those. You may enter into 20 contracts to build 1,000 housing units across Montana. And if anyone violates one of those 20 contracts, you're going to take them to court and make sure that they either perform on the contract or pay the damages that come from not performing. And that's seen as, well, that's just what you do. I mean, if someone takes $2 million from you to build an apartment building and they don't build it, then you take them to court and say, I want my money back, or I want you to finish building it. That isn't you creating the conflict. The person who took your $2 million and didn't build your building created the conflict. The insurance company who took your insurance premiums and then didn't cover your health care created the conflict. You didn't create it. But now it's on you to find a lawyer to go assert your rights. And all along, while you are trying to scrap together the money to find a lawyer or state your case, people are looking at you as like, why are you the jerk who is bringing a lawsuit? Why can't you resolve this in a low conflict, no conflict way? Why can't you just collaborate? Someone steals my stuff, I'm not there to collaborate with them. I'm there to get my stuff back. That's true too. If someone punches me in the face, I'm not there to collaborate and say, could you punch me a little less hard next time? Could you maybe give me a warning the next time you're going to punch me? No, it's just stop punching. So when people ask me as a lawyer, like, why do you resort to lawsuits? Well, because it's better than violence. And these are real problems. And real problems need real solutions, not platitudes, not someone patting you on the back, not someone giving you notice. Okay, I'll give you a 3-day notice before I come and punch you next time. No, you're just not going to. And you may say, well, that's kind of absurd. That's the type of work I work in. I work in abuse and neglect. And to break down those terms, abuse is someone hurting someone else. Neglect is someone who is responsible for taking care of someone mistreating that individual in some way. Both of those are violent acts. If you get into abusing or neglecting someone, that is violence, and I'm trying to stop that violence. So to say that, it's litigious to go to court, or you should try, resolving that without conflict, or do you really need to get people fired? Does a company need to go out of business? Do they need to get fined? The resolutions are, or as we say in the law, we sometimes call them remedies. How we remedy this is not the same thing as how we go about doing the advocacy. Different types of advocacy have different remedies available to them. And even when you are in the middle of advocating in a particular way, you can come up with creative remedies. And my goal is never to seek vengeance. It is always to seek justice. And justice is not the same thing as vengeance. Justice is not the same thing as a pound of flesh or punishment. Justice can be conceived in many different ways. Some people conceive of justice as a process by which you are heard. And that process alone is a form of justice. I'm less interested in that form of justice and more on a substantive side. How do I stop bad things from happening? And how do I promote good things to happen? And that can happen in a number of creative ways. And that, I think, is what people think litigation is about being positional or trying to win. And positions and winning are less important to me than fixing a problem. But if you've read our Substack article about conflict, you will see that I think just problem solving in itself is conflict oriented, because I think there's a problem and you don't. You don't see a problem because you benefit from the current situation, or you don't see a problem because the current situation doesn't bother you. So why should you put effort out into fixing it for someone else who says there's a problem, but I don't see it? That's fine. You can have that opinion that you like how things are currently, or you don't really care, but you're not going to put up a big effort for someone else claiming that there is a problem. That's your position. And I am offering there is a problem, and I'd like it fixed. That puts us at odds. You're over here saying there is no problem. I am saying there is a problem. That is the conflict. There was already, in my book, a problem. Me articulating the problem, now you are saying that's the problem. When I said no, the problem predates me even talking about it. And I don't think that's difficult to understand. I think some people don't want to understand that. They want to make advocates the villains. But in reality, the villainous behavior has already happened, and we are trying to fix this moving forward. So I just wanted to pause for a second and encourage folks to comment online. I've got the chat up here if people have questions. And I think we can look at sort of a case study. For example, we have a podcast coming out soon that is about a recent case that Disability Rights Montana brought around education in Montana. And maybe you saw one of our other live presentations. It wasn't a live podcast episode. It was a live training about how to receive the benefits of that lawsuit. But if you're interested in this, please check out that podcast when it comes out in a couple weeks. But I will try to very high level provide some description of that. Basically, there's a federal law that says students with disabilities need to have access to a good education. And every other state in the country was following that law and providing those students who needed it extra time to finish high school or to continue on in their coursework to prepare for adulthood. And Montana was the last state in the country to kick kids out at 18. Whereas other states were going to age 22 for students with, say, learning disabilities who needed more time to learn things, or students who needed help learning life skills, hygiene, cooking, paying your bills. That may take longer. And in other states, it was just taken for granted. Of course, you'll have up to age 22 to gain these skills in public school. But in Montana, you got kicked out at 18. There was a federal lawsuit in Hawaii over a decade ago that, and Hawaii had a very similar practice to us of not following that law and kicking kids out at 18. And the federal court said, no, that's against the law. The federal law says that if you are providing adult education in other fashions, you have to also provide it here, and every state does, and you have to do this. We and other disability advocates let the legislature know, let the Office of Public Instruction know, let local schools know, hey, this case happened. You may have thought you were, following federal law, but it's very clear now you're not following federal law. There is a court case in our own circuit. Oddly enough, you may not know how it's not odd you wouldn't know how the federal appeals courts are set up, but what is odd is that Montana is in the same federal circuit as Hawaii. So it's not like, somewhere in some other part of the country that isn't legally significant or connected to us. Hawaii is legally connected to us in a significant way in that they are in the Ninth Circuit for the Federal Court of Appeals, and so is Montana. So we pointed this out, like, this is the law of the land. This is a federal law. This is a federal court that has looked at this, and you need to follow it. We said that in legislative session after legislative session. And as I said, other disability advocates did as well. And for 10 years, nothing happened. Then we said, well, we've asked nicely for 10 years. We've explained ourselves. We've explained what the law says, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. So we built a team of lawyers from across the nation to assist us in this. That's another thing we could talk about in another either podcast or training or live episode. You drop down in the comments what you think would be valuable. But I firmly believe that it's valuable to build a strong litigation team anytime we go into court so that we're ready to throw down with anybody. If you're going up against the state, you're going up against the Attorney General's office. They're the biggest law firm in the state. They can, throw a lot of legal power behind this. We've got to be ready to throw down too. So we built a team of folks, including the lead lawyer from that Hawaii case. We said, hey, do you want to join our case and bring it so we can get the very last state that is a holdout on this to finally take a knee and follow the law? And within a couple months of filing the lawsuit, we had a settlement in that lawsuit. And at the end of last school year, kids were being told, oh, you're 18, you're out the door. And by the beginning of this school year, they were saying, sorry, we'll send you a letter telling you, please come back. You are eligible for 4 more years of high school. So now we've doubled the length of time that students with disabilities that need that time. We've doubled how long they can go to high school and the amount of education services they get. And if you think of, there are about 20,000 kids with disabilities in schools any given year, and 1/12 of those are graduating any given year. You're at over 1,000 kids a year who might be denied services. They could get 4 more years. That's 4 times 1,000 kids every year. That's 4,000 school years a year that we are losing as we graduate people too early under the federal law. So think of those over the last generation of kids, the 100,000 school years that was lost. Over the next generation of kids, the 100,000 school years that will be received. How much good will our communities receive from those students getting additional employment skills, those students getting additional independent living skills? It's incredible, but it's only incredible if you actually think those students have value. If you don't think that they're a waste of resource, if they're a waste of space. And I'm not saying any particular actor at any state level thought that. I'm talking about now you and me, fellow Montanans. Do you think that all people with disabilities have value? Are you going to invest in every single person with a disability to help them self-actualize, to help them have the best life possible? If not, then you and I have conflict, because I do think those things. So that is the conflict. Now, you might start riling up and say, but we waste so much tax dollars on these and this. It's like, so that's the conflict there. I didn't create that. I didn't put that in your belly, but I'm articulating it now. I'm putting it out there on the table. Are we going to work on this together, or are you going to say, no, those people are waste? I'm just asking, because we are here. Disability Rights Montana, the disability advocacy community are here to bring that difference of opinion to light and to build the community who doesn't agree with the person who says people with disabilities are a waste. But rather, we as a society have wasted the opportunity to get the most out of each member of our society. So if you are with me, you're not in conflict, you do think that we are leaving a lot of really good people and a lot of really good skills and values that those people bring to our society on the table because we haven't properly invested in them. We haven't structured our society in a way that allows them to be fully present and participate and lead in our communities. If you want to help transform Montana to be a place that truly accepts and embraces disability, not despite a disability, but because disability itself is a strength. It's a different way of looking and seeing the world, and all of our unique views are valuable. If that resonates with you, then I want you on our team, a growing team of advocates across the state that is ready to do the culture work. This is culture work. This is changing how we see each other, how we relate to one another, how we assume things will work when we show up, that we assume it'll work well for me because I'm going to work well I'm going to work hard to make it work well for others, and that they will reciprocate. that sounds like a good community to be a part of, where neighbors help each other, where we care if someone is feeling left out or their feelings are hurt. Those are good values. So if you want to help build those cultural values across Montana and make Montana culture disability culture, this is a good place for you. This podcast, this community, I will have down in the comments a place where you can sign up to join this community, the conversation. You'll get weekly email updates about how we're moving culture forward together, not how I'm moving culture forward or how Disability Rights Montana is moving culture together forward, but how we are working together, you and me, to make Montana culture disability culture. So I appreciate the time we've had here together. We're at a half hour. I haven't seen any comments come up yet. I know there's a little lag, but it's only like 10 seconds. There's no one moderating to cut me off if I start swearing, so I don't know what the delay is for other than the internets are long. They gotta go through lots of tubes. So I thank you for your time this afternoon, and keep an eye out for our next recorded podcast and sign up for future live events. Like I said, we will have live trainings, both in person and online, and we will have recorded trainings if your schedule just doesn't permit you to show up and participate in these. So thank you very much, folks, and I look forward to working together with you to identify conflicts that already exist and resolve those conflicts, not ignore them, but resolve them to build more justice